Hi, welcome to another episode of Strategic Insights, providing you with the latest update in the areas of business, technology, and management. I'm your host, Dr. Martin Lockstrom. Let's dive in. Welcome to today's episode, where we're diving into a critical topic. How will the US presidential election result affect global supply chains? Elections in the United States aren't just domestic affairs. They ripple across the world, impacting international trade, supply chains, and economic policies. As we head into the next presidential election, it's important to understand how the outcome can shape global markets and, more specifically, the flow of goods and services. First, let's consider the two main factors at play: trade policy and diplomatic relations. The stance a new president takes on international trade agreements, tariffs, and trade partners will directly influence how efficiently global supply chains operate. For example, if the president adopts a protectionist approach, imposing tariffs or renegotiating key trade agreements, it could lead to bottlenecks in the flow of goods, increased costs, and even delays. On the other hand, a more open trade stance could facilitate smoother cross-border trade, reducing barriers and keeping supply chains intact. One key area to watch is relations with China. The US-China trade war had a significant impact on global supply chains. Under a protectionist regime, we could see a continuation of policies that place tariffs on Chinese goods or restrict access to US markets for certain products. This would push companies to reevaluate their supply chains, potentially moving manufacturing to other countries, a process that can be time-consuming and costly. On the flip side, a president who prioritizes diplomacy and trade deals could ease tensions with China, leading to the removal of tariffs and smoother trade between the two countries. This would stabilize global supply chains that rely on the manufacturing power of China, particularly in industries like electronics, pharmaceuticals, and consumer goods. Next, let's talk about energy and climate policies. These can't be ignored when we discuss supply chains. A president who prioritizes environmental regulation might implement policies that affect industries dependent on fossil fuels or incentivize renewable energy. This could lead to shifts in supply chain logistics, particularly for industries like transportation and manufacturing. Companies may need to adjust to greener practices, which could be beneficial in the long term, but might increase operational costs in the short term. Similarly, a president with a more relaxed approach to environmental regulations could focus on boosting domestic manufacturing and fossil fuel production. This could lower energy costs, benefiting transportation and logistics sectors, but may face backlash from environmental groups and countries focused on greener supply chains. Another aspect to consider is labor policy. US presidents have the power to influence labor markets through changes in minimum wage laws, labor protections, and immigration policies. A more restrictive immigration stance could lead to labor shortages in key sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and logistics, driving up costs and leading to potential disruptions in supply chains. Alternatively, a more flexible immigration policy could help maintain or increase the workforce that keeps these supply chains running smoothly. Now, let's not forget the role of technology in supply chains. The digitalization of logistics and the rise of smart technologies have transformed how companies manage inventory and distribution. A president with a focus on innovation and technology could push policies that enhance infrastructure, boost 5G networks, or invest in emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, which would greatly benefit global supply chains by increasing efficiency and reducing delays. On the contrary, less focus on tech advancement could slow the growth of these innovations, leading to stagnation in supply chain evolution. The election result can also impact international collaborations. The US is part of many global agreements that support international trade, like the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, or the World Trade Organization. The next president's policies towards these organizations will determine how closely the US collaborates with other countries on trade issues. If the US withdraws or becomes more isolationist, supply chains could become more fragmented, driving up costs and creating inefficiencies as companies scramble to adapt. Then, there's the matter of geopolitical stability. Political and economic instability in countries where the US has major supply chain ties can lead to disruptions. A US president with a strong foreign policy, capable of fostering stable relationships, can help mitigate risks, ensuring smoother global trade. However, deteriorating relations with key nations, particularly allies and trading partners, could introduce uncertainties and delays. Lastly, let's briefly touch on health and safety regulations. The global pandemic has shown how critical these factors are to supply chains. A president who prioritizes public health and safety could impose stricter regulations that affect global trade, such as new safety standards for products and imports. These regulations can cause short-term disruptions, but may also create safer, more resilient supply chains in the long run. To sum up, the US presidential election will have a profound impact on global supply chains. The policies around trade, labor, energy, technology, and diplomacy all play pivotal roles. Whether the result leads to greater protectionism or a push for more global integration, the outcome will reverberate across industries worldwide. For businesses, understanding these potential changes is crucial to preparing for what comes next. As the next election looms, we're analyzing how the proposed policies of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris could impact global supply chains. Trade policy and international relations. Donald Trump's proposed trade policies. Trump's first term was marked by a protectionist agenda, with his administration implementing tariffs and renegotiating trade deals, most notably the US-China trade war. His proposed policies for a second term suggest a continuation of this approach, with the focus on America First. Trump has emphasized bringing manufacturing back to the US, potentially by imposing further tariffs on foreign imports and re-evaluating current trade agreements. For global supply chains, this could mean increased costs for companies relying on imports, especially from China, and potential delays as companies work to restructure their supply chains to accommodate higher tariffs. Additionally, Trump has suggested cutting ties with global organizations like the World Trade Organization, WTO, arguing that they harm US economic interests. Such a move would further fragment global trade and disrupt long-standing trade relationships, increasing unpredictability in the flow of goods. Kamala Harris's proposed trade policies. On the other hand, Kamala Harris, as a Democratic candidate, signals a more multilateral approach to trade. Harris would likely focus on rebuilding alliances that Trump strained, particularly with the European Union and Canada. By strengthening existing trade agreements like the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, and possibly entering new ones, Harris's approach could enhance global trade fluidity and stabilize supply chains. Her policies would aim to remove barriers, making cross-border trade smoother, especially with China, if tensions ease under her administration. Harris has also suggested a shift towards green energy and sustainable trade, which could introduce new regulations in supply chains, but would ultimately encourage more environmentally friendly practices in manufacturing and logistics. China relations and supply chains. Donald Trump on China. Trump's aggressive stance on China reshaped the global supply chain landscape. He imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, sparking a trade war that has resulted in many companies reconsidering their reliance on Chinese manufacturing. Trump has indicated that he would continue to put pressure on China, potentially leading to even more tariffs and restrictions. If Trump is re-elected, we could see further decoupling between the US and China, leading companies to move their supply chains to other countries, such as Vietnam, India, or Mexico. This process could be costly and time-consuming for businesses, especially in industries like technology, electronics, and textiles, which are heavily reliant on Chinese manufacturing. Companies may face significant disruption and added costs as they adjust to a new supply chain structure. Kamala Harris on China. Harris, by contrast, would likely seek a more balanced approach to China. While she would maintain a firm stance on human rights and cybersecurity issues, she might opt for diplomacy and negotiations over tariffs and trade wars. A Harris administration could result in the easing of trade tensions with China, providing stability to companies that rely on Chinese manufacturing. Easing tariffs could help reduce the cost of imports and make supply chains more predictable. Harris may also focus on diversifying supply chains to reduce dependency on China without the abrupt shifts seen under Trump. Encouraging US companies to spread their manufacturing footprint across multiple countries would help mitigate risks without causing sudden disruptions. Energy and climate policy impact. Trump's energy and climate policies. Trump has been clear about his intention to deregulate the energy industry and support fossil fuel production. This includes reducing environmental regulations, which he argues stifle business growth. A second Trump term would likely see continued investments in traditional energy sources like oil, coal, and natural gas. For global supply chains, this could translate into lower energy costs for transportation and manufacturing, especially domestically. However, Trump's environmental deregulation policies could lead to friction with other countries pushing for greener supply chains. companies might find it difficult to balance their global environmental commitments with Trump's domestic policies. Harris's energy and climate policies. Harris is a strong advocate for addressing climate change and transitioning to renewable energy. Under her leadership, the U.S. would likely impose stricter environmental regulations, affecting industries that rely on fossil fuels. This shift towards greener practices would require supply chains to adopt more sustainable methods, such as using renewable energy for manufacturing and transportation. While there could be higher short-term costs associated with this transition, in the long run, it would lead to more sustainable and resilient supply chains. Additionally, Harris's focus on green energy could open up opportunities for new industries and innovations, such as electric vehicles and clean technology, reshaping global supply chains in those sectors. Labor policy and immigration. Trump's labor and immigration policies. Trump has long advocated for stricter immigration policies, which could have significant implications for industries reliant on immigrant labor, such as agriculture, manufacturing, and logistics. A second term could see further restrictions on work visas and immigration pathways, leading to labor shortages in these sectors. For global supply chains, labor shortages in the U.S. could increase production costs and create bottlenecks in industries like food production and manufacturing. Companies might face higher wages and difficulties in finding skilled labor, forcing them to either automate or outsource more jobs. Harris's labor and immigration policies. Harris, on the other hand, would likely adopt a more lenient immigration policy, easing restrictions and providing pathways for immigrants to enter the workforce. This would help address labor shortages in key industries, ensuring that supply chains remain efficient. Moreover, Harris's support for raising the minimum wage and strengthening worker protections could increase costs for businesses, but it could also result in a more stable and motivated workforce, reducing turnover and increasing productivity over time. Technology and infrastructure. Trump's approach to technology and infrastructure. Trump has supported deregulation in the tech sector, particularly with respect to 5G and AI technologies. However, his approach to trade has sometimes created barriers for technological collaboration, particularly with countries like China. A second Trump term could see continued growth in U.S. technology infrastructure, but with potential restrictions on technology transfers and partnerships with foreign nations. This could complicate global tech supply chains, particularly for companies that rely on Chinese suppliers for components like semiconductors. Harris's approach to technology and infrastructure. Harris would likely support greater investment in U.S. infrastructure, particularly in emerging technologies like AI, automation, and 5G networks. Under her leadership, we could see more emphasis on public-private partnerships and greater investment in technological innovation, which would enhance supply chain efficiency and reduce logistical bottlenecks. Additionally, her focus on diplomacy and international collaboration would likely lead to fewer restrictions on global tech partnerships, allowing for smoother supply chains in industries like electronics, telecommunications, and advanced manufacturing. Conclusion. In summary, the outcome of the U.S. presidential election will significantly impact global supply chains. A Trump re-election could lead to more protectionism, trade barriers, and disruptions, but also lower domestic energy costs and continued deregulation. On the other hand, a Kamala Harris victory would likely bring more diplomacy, greener policies, and a multilateral approach to trade, stabilizing global supply chains, but potentially increasing operational costs through environmental regulations and labor reforms. Businesses around the world need to prepare for either outcome, understanding that the policies of each candidate will shape the way goods and services move across borders and how global trade adapts in the years to come. That's all for this episode. If you like it, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button in order to stay up to date with more awesome contents ahead. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.